Hello everybody, what is up? My name is Sir Medieval and welcome back to another video of Lost Ark. This is a requested video on a Warlord PVE build, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get to it. So this build starting out is a very important one to have in terms of the setup and the skill choices that we have in here. It's a really powerhouse build when it comes down to it. It's one that's filled with quite a bit of CC, but more than anything, it's probably capable of outputting the most power the Warlord is capable of. So let's go ahead and get started. With the Q ability, this is probably one of our most important ones, and it's really fun to use actually. This skill is called Sharp Spear. And with the upgrade that we have here, as you can see, it kind of twirls around instead of actually pokey poke like that. It's very important to have this twirl because it's actually really good for AoE. If you're in a tight spot and you feel like you're going to get hit from behind, this is a good skill to have, especially for that. So that's the first upgrade on the right here. I love this skill so much actually. It's pretty quick. And then you have on the second one, we have the wound upgrade, and this one causes the target to bleed. Very useful against not only bosses, but of course NPCs as well, just randomly out in the world or in dungeons. Pick your poison. Very useful upgrade to have on that one. It doesn't do a lot of bleed, but it's enough to matter for sure. Just like if you had a target burning or anything like that, it does some damage. And this third one is going to be called Perpetual Spear, and what it does is it changes it to a combo skill to allow you to basically follow up with the second attack. If we just had this one right here, we would only be able to do one of it, and it would just increase the attack range and damage by 20%. But if you have two, because you see that one did about 1.7k, then you could essentially, if you crit, you could get about, I want to say about 2-3k out of that. So it's just better to have it on that second one. You get more DPS output over long term. And then for the second skill, this is the R ability right here. This one is really fun to use. Now this one is called, I believe it's called Shield Slam. Actually, yeah, it is. Okay. So for Shield Slam, it starts off with just 2. If you don't have it fully upgraded at all, you can just only attack twice. But if you have it fully upgraded, you can add that 2 extra attacks to it. 1 extra attack, sorry. And it also stuns your enemy when you do use it, which is very useful as well. This first upgrade has to do with attack speed increased by 15%, which is a pretty important passive on the Warlord because we're just so freaking slow. So I definitely recommend going with that one, if anything. The other two right here, this one just basically causes all damage caused by a 2 base hit to be reduced for 5 seconds. Essentially making, I think what it means is you take less damage by 20% for 5 seconds, as long as you at least get 2 hits in there. This first one will cause it to possibly reset the cooldown 20%, and that's on the first hit. That has a chance to reset the cooldown. So obviously the attack speed is probably going to be more important, the most important for you, just because you got to make sure you keep moving in combat. The Warlord is slow, so any kind of attack speed increase we can get, very useful to us. The second upgrade is called Destruction of Equipment. Well, rough translation. But basically, when you hit an enemy, you might see this purple aura come across them. Let me see if I can do it on this guy. And basically that lowers their defenses and their power by about 20% for about 5 seconds. Very important skill if you're fighting, you know, like really tough mobs that are capable of doing a crap ton of damage. Just taking the pressure off your teammates, kind of being the support character that Warlord is, while also having a build that can optimize your DPS output. And the third one is called Blind Impact, which makes it so you can attack twice, essentially, is what we're looking for. Twice more. So the damage is also increased by about 30% with every extra strike that you get, and you also get that extra stun for about 2 seconds. And this does work on certain bosses as well, not just the smaller mobs, but it's very useful in that regard to make sure that you're getting as much CC as possible. W, of course, is Rising Spear, if I remember right. Oh wait, actually no, it is, let's take a look here, Dash Upper Fire. That's the one. I always get those ones confused. But this is your quick knock-up ability right here. Very good for getting some extra CC in there, and it'll combo very nicely with Spear Shot that we'll show you a little bit later. This one I kind of changed up for my PvP build to include Spear Shot because it's just so useful in a lot of cases, but I'll show you that in just a second. No upgrades on this one. You just want to have it fresh out the box. Don't really have to worry about upgrading it at all. You can just keep it like it is to have skill points for other skills. The leap we've went over before in the PvP build as well. This first one here is a little different though. This one we have increased damage done during landing by 15%. Going to be very useful. The second one is going to cause this lightning field to appear, which is going to be very useful for dealing damage over time. Doing this, along with that bleed as well, is going to start making that damage over time stack up. It's going to start mattering after that as well. So this one basically, just rough translation, it changes the lightning of the jump to the lightning property. Well, changes the property of the jump to lightning basically. And it creates a zone of landing for about 5 seconds. Does damage over time. And that's all there is to the lightning one. This is one that is really fun to use in PvE aspects. Can actually do quite a bit of damage and can keep a lot of mobs at bay. You just have to make sure you aim it right. It takes a little bit of practice to kind of memorize where each lightning bolt is going to go, kind of thing, but we'll go into that a little later as well here. You'll see a little bit of that. So this first upgrade is good luck, is what it says. And basically, another single lightning bolt will strike after it's done. That extra one right there, that's good luck right there. And it'll cause 80% damage to the enemy as well. Most of the time, it seems like it doesn't track enemies. It's just kind of random, it looks like, but it could be tracking them for all we know. Who knows? Maybe when we come across real mobs, it'll actually start tracking them. Let's see. Just to test it out here. So yeah, it looks like it's kind of random in a sense too. But that's okay. That's okay. That extra damage is going to help with boss fights. If they're right on top of you, it's more than likely going to hit anyway. So there's that at least. The second one is going to be called, and this one is for Powerful Blow. Damage to the enemy increased by 25%. And I also believe this is what causes the lightning to turn red as well, which is a pretty cool effect if you say so. I mean, like, if you ask me, that looks pretty sweet. I like the effect of that. That's nice. But that's the main goal of it, to increase the damage by 25% and also get that red lightning, of course, because that's awesome. Moving on, the last one is called Flash of Lightning, which basically makes it go this far out. This other one just increases the duration of the electric shock, which is the CC, for about 3 seconds. But as you can see, it does not go out nearly as far. This one is very useful if you have mobs coming from far away, if you have extra ones you want to hit, like behind you, front of you, wherever it is. This is going to help you a lot. Just make sure you cover your bases with this skill is what this does. This next skill is probably the bread and butter for the Warlord build, especially in boss fights. This is called Charge Stinger. So what this does is, first, this upgrade is for the bleed right here. This is a charge up ability. But when it crits, it can do massive damage. Usually, and it's not showcased well here because for some reason it doesn't want to do as much damage as it should be. But usually you can get up to about 22k crits with this skill. You can get some crazy crits going. There we go. I think we just saw 11k there as well. 13k, yeah. And when it crits, yeah, that can stack up in damage really high. So when you have a boss staggered, like when it's in its weakened state, which is a good thing for like both destroyers and warlords to build in terms of the stat. I forget what it's called. It's either proficiency or specialty, one of those two. But that's when you want to charge up the stinger from behind them, because it actually does more damage if you're standing behind them. And then just hit them in the back really freaking hard. Really hard. And that's going to do massive damage and apply that bleed as well. The second upgrade is called Reinforcement Charge, which increases the attack power of the skill by about 10% per charge as it increases. As you can see, it's about 30%, 20 to 30% increase right there, just off those extra 2 gauges, extra 2 to 3. So that's going to be very important as well for you to make sure you're stacking up as much damage as possible. There we go, 26k right there. Perfect. There we go. Yeah, and then applying the bleed on top of that, oof, that's going to be very powerful. Crit is a really good thing for warlords to build regardless, so I would definitely recommend going for that as a stat too. And then going for like proficiency or specialty as a separate one that will, let me see, I'll go ahead and pull this up as well. I'll tell you in just a second, but the one that increases the weakening damage so that you can stagger the boss faster. And the third one right here is going to be called Last Charge, and the charge phase is increased by 1 more step. If it's overcharged, it moves farther away and deals 30% more damage, adds 30% more damage, and blows away. So basically what it does is it'll add another 30% on top of whatever we get here. And I don't know, it's rough translated, so I don't know what the extra 30% is for actually, but let me see here. It says 30% more damage, so I believe the overall skill does 30%, more, and then it adds another 30% onto just this. It might be 60%. Actually, this one's not very clear, but either way, it does a lot of damage. The other one, all it does is it increases the charge phase by about 1 step, or decreases it to 1 step actually, and it changes it to a lightning property. So it's not very useful. I mean, the only thing you'd really use it for is CC, but that's what we have the Thunderbolt skill for as well. So I'd say this one is a heck of a lot better of an upgrade. And then what we're looking for in terms of stats for the Warlord to build, I would say that you definitely want to go crit if you're going for PVE, so you could just have like a PVE ability stone. That's what I did. I had one that had like crit and then proficiency. That's the one. And then you can also have one for like endurance and then like agility or crit if you wanted to again. But that's what I did, and I recommend that as well for you. So proficiency is the one that increases the CC done, decreases CC received, and increases the weakening damage. So that's basically the gauge that you see below the boss's health that will stagger it at a certain point. That's what you want to go for in terms of a stat to get that down as fast as you possibly can. Bam. And then as for the next skill, it's called Outcry. We've seen this one before. Really, really good one in PvP, but for this one, what we do is we just go for 4 points just because there's other important skills to be leveling up in this build and we don't really need it as much, but I recommend having it just because, and this one up right here, it decreases the cooldown by about 5 seconds. But something I've learned, and that's really useful to know, Outcry actually interrupts boss attacks. Not just boss attacks, but anybody's attacks. So if you have a telegraph that you're not sure you're going to be able to get out of, or you have a friend that's about to get hit by a telegraph that you're not sure they can get out of, Outcry is going to interrupt that boss, and I'll be showing you that later as well. Definitely recommend it, but it's a dangerous skill to use because for some reason, so it's a taunt in most cases, but for some reason it actually pisses bosses off, and once you interrupt them, it seems like the execution of the next skill they choose ends up being a lot faster, and for some reason, in some cases, more powerful. And for instance, the 275, I think, Chaos Dungeon, there's a boss in there that can blow like in a frontal cone. Like he'll do a frontal cone move that's really, really powerful. If you stand in it, probably going to kill you. If you interrupt that, he's probably going to do it again in like a millisecond afterwards, and it's going to probably one-shot you guaranteed, like even if you have a shield on. So the skill is a little bit interesting. It's like rolling the dice, but for the most part, it should save teams' lives. It more than likely is going to interrupt their boss skill, like one of their important skills, and they'll end up using one of their useless skills. So you just kind of have to hope that your teammate can react fast enough if they end up switching from like a radius charge up spell to just instantly charging at one of your friends. But anyway, that's a really useful skill to have on your bar as well. Next one, and one of the last ones as well, is Charge Spear. Let me take a look at this. Spear Shot, actually, never mind. But this one, of course, we had this one on our PvP build, and this is on our A ability. Really, really good skill to have for those quick burst shots. And when you crit with it, it can do up to about, I want to say 10k. 10k per crit, yeah, double that, 5k right there. And it does some extra damage on the side as well. So this first upgrade, of course, is for increasing the attack speed by 15%. Very useful skill to have as well. Make sure you're doing the most damage and getting the most impact out of it. Second one is called it's called Intensified Blow. Damage to the enemy increased by 25%. Really good to have as well. We want to do as much damage as we possibly can. The penetration one on the right side here, I think what it does is it increases the like piercing. So if you have multiple enemies in front of you that need to get a hit basically, then it'll kind of try to go, it might only hit a certain amount to start with, but this one will ensure that you're hitting like all of them basically. So it's just better to go with the 25% damage bonus and just instead. And then Firestorm as well. This one is basically the one that makes it increase your movement speed and go forth like 4 meters. So I would definitely recommend going with Intensified Blow for sure for that 25% damage increase. And then the last one is called Firestorm, and it makes you move 4 meters forward. The moment you stick with your spear, it explodes and causes 40% damage. So this is a good spell to have for, let's say we want to follow up with, I don't think I can see these guys, but go ahead and get a couple small ones in here. Test this out a little bit. So let's say we want to follow up our uppercut with a little bit of a spear shot. It's going to make sure that we get most bang for our buck there. Get that guy going down, and then see how much damage that can do. The potential of that. One, two, three. There you go. There you go. And that's basically the build in terms of PvE. You already know about the ultimate skill. What it does is basically puts your shield up. It stuns anybody in the radius, enemies included for PvE, except bosses. It decreases the amount of damage you take by 40% inside of it. And then it helps with increasing your shield gauge back to full as well. And then if you press Z, this is your full-on shield to avoid CC and whatnot. If you're about to get hit by a boss skill, because we don't have counter spear on this build, Z is what you want to throw up. And then X is your team shield that can prevent them from taking damage, and it uses up your shield gauge to put on yourself. Really useful for preventing a room-wide AoE skill from killing everybody, stuff like that. Make sure to take use of that as well.